The desert should have cooled by now. For as long as life existed on these sands, the day's brutal heat always surrendered to the night's cold breath. Temperature dropped quickly after sunset, sliding down the dunes in waves of relief. Shadows grew long, insects woke, the air thinned, and predators emerged under the sky's widening stars. But tonight, as the Fennec fox crouched atop a dune, the heat refused to fade. He was small, light, built for survival in a place defined by extremes. Researchers tracking him had named him Arin, a fox marked by unusually large ears and a pale streak across his back. He used those ears to sense everything: beetles tunneling under sand, wind approaching from kilometers away, the faint shift of temperature when dusk touched the dunes. But tonight the dunes felt wrong, warm, heavy, as if they stored the day's sun and refused to release it. Arin lifted his delicate muzzle, waiting for the desert's familiar nighttime scent. Cool minerals, dry winds, distant shrubs. Instead, he smelled only heat baked into the sand. The horizon glowed orange long after the sun had dipped below it. The sky should have turned blue-grey, then black. Instead, it lingered in a strange copper haze, refusing to darken. Arin rose onto his paws and tested the sand. It burned. Not as fiercely as midday, but far hotter than it should have been after sunset. He lifted his paw quickly, shaking grains away. His fur, normally a perfect insulator, felt heavy, trapping the warmth instead of deflecting it. He made his way down the dune, careful to step on crusted layers where the sand held firmer. The air pressed against him, dense and unmoving. At this hour, cool currents usually swept across the desert floor, carrying small eddies of grains in shimmering trails. But now the air lay flat, thick, stagnant. He reached a narrow wadi, a dry riverbed that normally cooled first. He slipped into its shallow channel and lowered his body to the ground. The heat lingered there too. He twitched his ears. The desert was quiet. Too quiet. No beetles clicking their armoured legs, no geckos slithering out from crevices, no birds calling brief songs before sleep. Every creature waited for the night that refused to arrive. Arin padded toward a cluster of acacia shrubs whose shade he relied on during hunts. Their branches drooped heavily, leaves curled inward, signs of heat stress they should not show after dark. A horned viper lay coiled under one branch, tongue flicking hesitantly. Even the snake seemed confused by the lingering warmth, its body rising and falling with shallow, uncertain breaths. Arin stepped back cautiously, but the viper didn't strike. It simply watched him with dull eyes, as if its instincts were suspended in the thick air. Far off, on the crest of a higher dune, lights flickered, artificial, white-blue, too steady to be stars. Humans. Researchers stationed at a mobile climate lab. Their metal towers and antenna arrays pierced the sky, collecting data on wind patterns and atmospheric cooling rates. Arin watched them for a moment. He tolerated their presence. They brought no danger and sometimes left behind traces of food. But tonight their movements were frantic. Silhouettes ran back and forth, equipment beeped into the quiet desert, and one woman's voice carried faintly through the heavy air. Cooling rate is abnormal. 0 drop in 2 hours. A man responded, breathless. Long-wave radiation is trapped. Surface heat isn't escaping. Another voice chimed in. Atmospheric inversion is stronger than predicted. Heat locked at ground level. Arin didn't understand their words, but he understood the tension behind them. The humans were worried. And when humans worried about the sky, the land followed. He turned away and continued deeper into the dunes. The wind, the desert's oldest companion, did not come. Normally, small gusts swept along the ridges at night, shaping dunes with soft whistles, carrying scents across long distances. But now the dunes stood stiff, contours sharp and unmoving. Arin climbed another slope, feeling the sand shift under him without the cooling crust that usually formed after sunset. His paws sank deeper into the loose layers, still radiating heat upward. He paused halfway, panting lightly, ears drooping under the oppressive warmth. All around the desert, subtle signs of distress appeared. A jerboa sitting too still beside its burrow, waiting for coolness that never came, a line of ants refusing to leave their nest, a desert hare licking dry air with rapid breath, unable to vent heat, a falcon perched motionless, wings half open, unwilling to hunt. Aaron crept closer to the hare. Normally, he would stalk such prey cautiously, but tonight the hare barely noticed him. It was too focused on its own discomfort, too stunned by the unyielding heat. The sky darkened slightly, but instead of cooling, the temperature held steady. A faint reddish glow pulsed along the horizon, trapped beneath a layer of atmospheric haze. Stars appeared weakly, flickering against the thermal distortion rising from the ground. Aaron lifted his head again. Night was here, but night was not arriving. He felt no relief, no shift, no change. The desert clung to the day with unnatural force. A sudden vibration trembled through the sand. Not a predator, not a burrowing creature. Heavy footsteps. Aaron turned to see a camel moving slowly across the ridge, its long legs sinking into the warm sand. The camel's breath rose in steaming puffs, unusual for evening. It shook its head and groaned softly, blinking as if waiting for cool air that refused to wrap around its body. Aaron watched, uneasy. A soft mechanical hum drifted from the research camp. The humans had lowered a thermal scanner onto the sand. One of them knelt, brushing sweat from her forehead. Surface temps stable at 43 degrees Celsius, hours after sunset. Another tapped a screen. Radiative cooling failure. Something is preventing the heat from escaping. We're recording the slowest nightfall in the region's history. Aaron flicked his ears toward them, sensing urgency but not understanding the cause. He wanted only what every creature in the desert waited for: relief. Cold. The night's embrace. But the night had changed. It was here in color but not in temperature, here in darkness but not in spirit, here in theory but not in truth. He paced the ridge, unsettled. When the desert refused to cool, life itself faltered. The night's predators grew exhausted. Prey grew disoriented. Reptiles overheated. Plants wilted. Even the dunes seemed to shiver beneath the weight of heat trapped under the sky. Aaron sat down, tail curled around his paws, staring at the horizon where stars should have shimmered in cold clarity. Instead, they blurred in layers of rising warmth. The fox waited. He waited for the breath of cold wind across his ears. He waited for sand to tighten under the cooling night. He waited for insects to emerge, for geckos to scurry, for desert life to wake. He waited for the moment the world would exhale. But the dunes stayed warm, the air stayed thick, the sky stayed copper-hued, and night, despite its color, refused to arrive. Aaron waited on the ridge far longer than instinct allowed. Every Fennec fox knew the desert's schedule. Heat rose, heat fell, night claimed the dunes in a cold rush sharp enough to sting the nose. But tonight, he felt none of that familiar descent into chill. Instead, the warmth clung to the sand as though fused to it, a thick blanket pressing upward, refusing to release its hold. He rose and padded slowly along the crest. His paws sank into grains still radiating heat, and he flinched, lifting each paw faster than the last. The sand should have cooled minutes after the sun dipped. It held warmth, yes, but never this long, never this steadily. He turned to face the North Dune, where a colony of beetles usually emerged after sunset, clicking across the surface in tireless waves. Aaron waited for the faint drumming of their legs. He listened. Nothing. The beetles remained underground, trapped in burrows that were too hot to leave and too shallow to escape the heat that refused to dissipate. He could almost sense them beneath him, still, silent, clinging to survival while waiting for a night that never truly came. Aaron shook out his fur, trying to release trapped heat. A faint rasping sound drifted across the dunes. He turned his head sharply. It was a gecko, belly scraping against a rock ledge as it struggled to find a cool surface. Geckos never came out when it was this warm. Their tiny bodies couldn't shed heat fast enough. Yet this one ventured out anyway, driven by confusion or desperation. It lifted one foot, then another, each movement slow, agonized. In the dim copper light, Aaron could see that its skin looked dry, stressed. Even reptiles, masters of heat, were suffering. He trotted toward a patch of shrubs, places he often hunted rodents in the early night, but found them quiet. A jerboa crouched beneath a bush, sides heaving with shallow breaths. It didn't dart away when Aaron approached. Instead, it shifted once, trembling, too hot to move quickly. Aaron didn't attack. Something deeper than hunger told him not to. The jerboa wasn't prey tonight. It was another creature caught in a malfunctioning desert. The air around him wavered. Heat shimmer. Real, heavy, distorted. But that wasn't what scared him. What scared him was its direction. It wasn't rising. It hung low, trapped, bending the horizon in a wavering haze that did not rise into the cooling sky. Heat was supposed to escape upward. That was how the desert breathed. He looked up. The sky should have been black by now. Stars should have sharpened into cold points. Instead, the sky kept a bruised reddish tint that clung to the horizon and smudged upward. A lid of warm air covered the dunes, pressing heat downward. The stars appeared blurry, faint, as if viewed through smoke. From the research camp, voices rose again, faint but urgent. Temp still above 40 degrees Celsius, 2 hours after astronomical dusk. Radiative cooling blocked. Inversion layer trapped at 200 meters. Nothing's escaping. The desert can't shed heat. This is unprecedented. Aaron watched them from afar. Their shadows stretched unnaturally long in the copper light. Their movements were fast, anxious. They carried equipment across the sand, heat sensors, air samplers, meteorological towers that blinked red in the heavy haze. One scientist stumbled, catching herself on a dune. She touched the surface with her palm and recoiled, shaking her hand as if burned. Aaron could hear her soft exhale. Still hot? How is it still hot? A thin breeze stirred then, a ghost of what wind should have been. Aaron felt it brush his whiskers, and instinctively he closed his eyes, waiting for cool relief. The breeze was warm, warm, even after sunset. Warm and short-lived. It died instantly, swallowed by the thick air. Aaron lowered his body, panting lightly. His ears, normally perfect radiators, felt swollen under the stagnant heat. He pressed them flat against his back, desperate to protect them from the hot air. But it didn't help. A sound cut through the heavy quiet. Soft, rhythmic, out of place. Padding. He turned and saw a small caravan of camels moving across the far dune. Their movements were slow, heads lowered, long legs dragging through the sand. A herder walked at their side, wrapped in cloth but holding it away from his neck in an attempt to catch non-existent breeze. His breath rose in uncomfortably thick clouds, illuminated by the strange reddish night. The camels' silhouettes shimmered with rising heat, though the sun had been gone for hours. The herder paused, scratching his head, looking back toward the sky. Aaron couldn't make out his words, but the man's posture spoke clearly. Confusion, unease, fear. Humans knew the desert just as well as foxes did, but tonight the desert betrayed them both. Aaron moved down the dune to a shallow hollow where he often slept during early evening hunts. The sand here should have been cool by now, offering relief. He dug with both paws, scattering grains, but even the lower layers burned. Heat had soaked deep. He tried again, deeper. Heat. Still heat. He stopped digging, chest heaving. His paws trembled from exertion. He backed out of the hollow and shook off sand that clung to his fur like sticky ash. He stepped onto a rock slab. It glowed faintly with stored warmth. Still hot, still refusing to cool. A low moan drifted across the desert, a sound almost mournful. Aaron looked toward the dunes and saw one of the camels kneeling in the sand, legs folding shakily beneath it. The herder knelt beside the animal, touching its neck, then looking helplessly toward the sky. No relief came. Arin turned his head sharply as a flicker of light danced near the shrubs. A lizard, darting clumsily, trying to escape the heat still radiating from the ground. It stumbled, then froze, belly pressed to earth that refused to cool enough to save it. Predator and prey, reptile and mammal, all were trapped in the same heated cage. He lifted his nose again. There was no scent of night, no minerals cooling, no dew forming, no drift of cold from distant dunes. Just heat. Thick, suffocating heat. Night had arrived in colour but not in temperature, in darkness but not in cooling. The desert's oldest cycle, heat escaping into the void above, was broken. Arin curled his tail around himself, staring at the shimmering horizon. His ears flicked weakly. His paws remained warm against the sand. His breath came shallow, almost frantic. He waited for relief. He waited for the desert's exhale. He waited for the sky to release the day. But the earth beneath him burned softly. The dunes radiated stored heat into the night. The air refused to move, and the world stayed trapped in a day that would not end.